Chinedu, you must kill your mother to gain riches in abundance, and you will die once you hear a cry of a baby in your house. The priest's voice resonated through the shrine, his eyes glowing eerily in the dim light of the fire pit. The air smelled of burning herbs and blood, a concoction that made Chinedu's stomach churn. He stared at the priest, his lips trembling. He had never imagined that seeking wealth would come with such a great price. The priest repeated the words again and again, his words chilling, snapping Chinedu out of his thoughts. Decide now, wealth beyond your dreams or a life of poverty. Chinedu's mind flashed back to the dilapidated childhood home, his father's debt and his mother's free hands from years of menial labor. Resolved, he nodded, his voice barely audible as he agreed. The ritual began that night, marked by chanting, animal sacrifices, and the cruelest of all, the death of his mother. Chinedu's heart broke, but as the priest assured him, he was reborn that night. The next day, his wealth began to multiply mysteriously, and contracts he had been denied suddenly came flooding in. Adaeze, a radiant 25-year-old from Imo State, was no stranger to struggle. She often rose before the sun to fetch water from a nearby stream or help her mother roast corn by the roadside. Her father, a hard-working car mechanic, worked tirelessly to make ends meet, but the family's income was meager. Despite the poverty surrounding her, Adaeze was known in her village for her beauty, grace, and a kind heart. On a hot Saturday afternoon, Adaeze carried a basket of yams on her way home from the market. Sweat trickled down her face, but her smile never wavered as she greeted neighbors along the way. As she walked down the dusty road, a sleek black car approached her, its windows glinting in the sunlight. The driver honked persistently, and Adaeze, puzzled, stopped. "Excuse me, miss," the driver called, stepping out of the car. He was tall with an air of confidence and wealth. The man introduced himself as Chinedu, a businessman from Imo State. His polished appearance and warm smile caught Adaeze off guard. "You are the most beautiful woman I have ever seen," he began, his words smooth and deliberate. Adaeze, initially hesitant, tried to brush off his advances, but Chinedu's persistence was unmatched. For weeks, Chinedu called her, texted her, and even visited her family's humble roadside store, buying roasted corn and making small talk with the mother. His determination wore down Adaeze's resistance, and eventually she agreed to go on a date with him. Her family, though cautious, couldn't deny the potential blessing a relationship with a wealthy man could bring. Adaeze and Chinedu's relationship grew quickly. He showered her with gifts, not only for her but for her family. New clothes, a generator for the house, and even a sewing machine for her mother's business were just a few of the items Chinedu generously provided. Adaeze was initially overwhelmed, but soon found herself falling for his charm and generosity. Chinedu's wealth seems limitless. He took Adaeze on outings to expensive restaurants, weekend getaways to nearby resorts, experiences she had never imagined possible. Despite her growing love for Chinedu, a small voice in her heart warned her about the man, who seemed too good to be true. But Adaeze silenced her doubt, choosing to focus on the happiness he brought into her life and that of her family. "What am I going to lose in all this? Chinedu is a well-brought-up person," she thought to herself. One evening, Chinedu knelt before Adaeze with a sparkling diamond ring in his hand. "Marry me, Adaeze," he said, his voice steady and sincere. Tears welled in her eyes as she accepted. The news of their engagement spread like wildfire throughout the village. Adaeze's parents were overjoyed and neighbors couldn't hide their envy. Preparation for the wedding began immediately. Chinedu spared no expenses, hiring the best caterers, decorators, and designers. When the day arrived, Adaeze walked down the aisle in a gown fit for royalty. The church overflowed with dignitaries, all eager to witness the union of love and wealth. Adaeze's happiness seems complete, but the shadow of Chinedu's dark secret loomed nearby. After their honeymoon, Adaeze moved into Chinedu's mansion, a massive duplex with every luxury she could ever dream of. She marveled at the chandeliers, marbled floors, and sprawling gardens. "This is your home now," Chinedu said, pulling her close. "But there's one rule you must never break. The penthouse is off limits." Adaeze's curiosity was stimulated, but she nodded obediently. For weeks, she focused on settling into her new role as a wife, redecorating rooms with learning to manage the household staff. Yet the locked door to the penthouse haunted her dream, its present a constant reminder of something forbidden. When Adaeze discovered that she was pregnant few months later, her joy knew no bound. She imagined a life filled with laughter, the pity party of tiny feet. But at 3 months, she woke up one night with sharp pains in her abdomen. By morning, her pregnancy was gone. Chinedu comforted her briefly, but quickly moved on, leaving Adaeze to grieve alone. The cycle repeated. Each time Adaeze conceived, she would lose her baby within months. Her body weakened and her spirit dimmed. She cried herself to sleep most nights, unable to understand why her dreams of motherhood remained unfulfilled. Unknown to her, Chinedu was offering the blood of her miscarriages as sacrifices to the secret court he served. Adaeze became pregnant for the 5th time, but this pregnancy was different. It reached the 8th month. One stormy night, she went into labor, writhing in pain and begging Chinedu to take her to the hospital. He refused, his face cold and unfeeling. "You will be fine," he muttered dismissively. Left with no choice, Adaeze delivered at home. But when the baby came out, it wasn't a child, it was worms. Horrified, Adaeze fainted at the sight of the scary creatures on the floor. When she woke up hours later, the memory of the horrific birth replayed in her mind. Shaking and weak, she began to put the pieces together. This was no ordinary problem, something deeply wrong with her marriage, and she vowed to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. Adaeze's sorrow deepened with each miscarriage. The once lively and hopeful woman became quiet and withdrawn. Her mother noticed the change during one of her visits. "Adaeze, you are not yourself," her mother said as they sat in the kitchen. Adaeze hesitated, but decided to share her pain. "Mama, I don't understand why this keeps happening," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. Her mother consoled her and suggested seeking spiritual help. "We must pray at all times," the mother consoled her. "These things may have a spiritual cause." Adaeze nodded, but hesitated to take any action. Chinedu, meanwhile, remained indifferent to her suffering. Adaeze started to notice strange patterns in his behavior, particularly the night he would leave the house without explanation. The locked penthouse also weighed heavily on her mind. What was her husband hiding? One evening, while Chinedu was away on a business trip, Adaeze's curiosity got the better of her. She retrieved the spare key Chinedu had carelessly left in his study and approached the penthouse, her hands trembling as she unlocked it. The door was dimly lit, with a faint smell of incense lingering in the air. To her horror, the walls were adorned with strange symbols, and a blood-stained altar stood in the center. On the altar were objects she couldn't comprehend: bones, candles, and a photo of her. Adaeze gasped, covering her mouth to stifle her scream. Panic set in, and she quickly locked the door and returned the key. That night, she prayed heavily, realizing her husband was involved in something far darker than she could ever imagine. When Chinedu returned, Adaeze couldn't hold back her fear. "Chinedu, what is in the penthouse?" she asked, her voice trembling. His face darkened and he glared at her. "I told you never to go there," he snapped. Adaeze recoiled at his anger. "What are you hiding? Why do I keep losing our babies?" She pressed on. Chinedu's tone shifted. "It is none of your concern, Adaeze. Some things are better left unknown." His vague response did little to ease her mind. Instead, it fueled her determination to uncover more of the truth. Desperate for answers, Adaeze confided in her mother. She took her to a local pastor known for his powerful prayers. After listening to Adaeze's story, the pastor shook his head solemnly. "Your husband is bound by a covenant with darkness," he revealed. "Your miscarriages are not natural. He is sacrificing your unborn children." Adaeze's heart broke at the revelation. The pastor advised her to be cautious but prayerful. "Only the power of God can break this curse," he said. With her faith renewed, Adaeze began to pray daily, asking God for protection and strength. Adaeze's prayer seems to give her a sense of peace, but her situation remained dire. Chinedu became more secretive, often leaving the house at odd hours. One day, Adaeze found herself unusually tired and nauseous. She suspected she was pregnant again, but she kept the news to herself. Her mother noticed her glowing skin, confronted her. "Adaeze, are you with a child?" she asked. Adaeze hesitated before nodding. "Mama, I can't lose this one," she said, tears streaming down her face. Together, they decided to keep the pregnancy a secret, knowing Chinedu would find a way to harm the baby if he knew about it. On the other hand, Chinedu began to suspect that Adaeze was hiding something. He noticed her loose clothing and suddenly aversion to certain food. "Are you pregnant again?" he asked her one evening, his tone sharp. Adaeze shook her head, feigning surprise. "No, I'm just tired," she replied, her heart racing. To keep up the charade, Adaeze wore baggy boo-boo gown and tied her stomach tightly. She avoided Chinedu as much as possible, focusing on her prayers and preparation for the baby. She knew time was running out, and her husband's suspicion was growing. Chinedu grew restless as his business began to falter. The occult leader demanded another sacrifice, this time warning him of the dire consequences if he failed. "You must bring the blood of your next child," the leader said coldly. Chinedu, desperate to maintain his wealth, agreed. Unaware that Adaeze was far along in her pregnancy, Chinedu focused on his rituals, oblivious to the battle his wife was fighting. Adaeze, meanwhile, relied on her mother and the pastor for strength, determined to save her unborn child. One stormy night, Adaeze went into labor. Her mother and the pastor were by her side, praying fervently as she delivered her babies, a boy and a girl. The moment the first baby cry filled the air, Chinedu, who was in the penthouse performing a ritual, froze. A sharp pain tore through his chest as the cries echoed in his ears. The curse has been fulfilled. Chinedu collapsed, his life draining away as the very wealth he had fought to protect consumed him. When Adaeze learned of Chinedu's death, she was overcome with mixed feelings and emotions. Grief for the man she had once loved and relief that the curse was finally broken. The pastor and her mother reassured her that Chinedu's death was the end of his dark legacy. The pastor led prayers in the house, cleansing it of his demonic presence. "You and your children are free," he declared. Adaeze knew that she could no longer stay in the mansion. It held too many painful memories. With the help of the church, Adaeze moved into a modest but comfortable apartment. The community rallied around her, donating clothes, food and money to help her start afresh. Determined to provide for her twins, she opened a boutique, selling beautiful clothes and shoes. Adaeze's strength and resilience became an inspiration to others. Though her journey had been marked by pain and loss, she found solace in her children and the new life she had built. The cries of her babies were no longer a curse, but a testament to her victory over darkness. Moral lesson of this beautiful short story: never be so desperate for wealth that you make a deal with the devil. The devil always has a way of giving you something and taking much more in return. Chinedu could have persisted and continued his struggles. One day, God, in his infinite mercy, would have opened ways for him. But because he was greedy and desperate, he had to sacrifice his own mother, who carried him for 9 months, for wealth, and even sacrifice his own unborn children because he wanted to maintain the wealth. And he also tried to endanger the life of his wife, Adaeze, without even informing her of the dark secret he had made with the devil, part which led to his death. We should all learn to be prayerful no matter what, because the devil is always lurking around looking for who to destroy. And as a child of God, we must learn to be able to decipher what the devil has in plan for us and subdue it with prayers. Prayers and faith will help us to move a long way. Just like Adaeze, who confided in the mother that took her to the pastor's house and she was freed. Now, having her twins by her side will erase all the pains and worries she had ever felt and all the children she had lost. Thank you very much for watching, and do have a lovely day ahead. Bye-bye.